I was about to ruin my life for a man who didn't even know I existed. My hand trembled just enough to smear the ink as I slid the folded receipt onto the black marble beside his crystal goblet of red wine, or what I desperately hoped was wine. "Anything else for you or your guest this evening, sir?" I asked, forcing my voice steady while my heart hammered against my ribs. His fiancée laughed at something on her phone, the sound practiced and perfect against the velvet hush of Nightshade's dining room. Behind Keldron Crowell, the city spread out through floor-to-ceiling windows, all glittering lights and lives that would never touch mine, a world of ordinary people who had no idea what walked among them after dark. 15 minutes earlier, I'd been hiding in the powder room, door locked, checking my phone during my mandated 5-minute break, when designer heels clicked across Italian marble. Signature red soles. I knew them by sound after 3 months at Nightshade. Her perfume arrived first, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The bathroom here was all hard surfaces. Black marble and mirror and polished chrome, nothing soft, nothing to absorb sound, even whispers carried. "I told you he'll be at the corner table." Her voice floated over the stall partition, low, but not quite low enough for true privacy. "By the eastern window." A pause. She was listening to someone on the other end. "The hunters are already inside, 1 near the bar, and 3 positioned by the kitchen entrance. You'll have clear lines the moment he settles." My thumb froze mid-scroll. I stopped breathing. Water ran briefly at the sink. "Use the silver-tipped bolts, obviously. Crossbows, not guns. Too much attention otherwise." Another pause. "His era ends tonight." The words hung in the air like smoke. Then she switched languages, something fluid and ancient that I couldn't place, her tone dropping to a whisper that blurred the remaining details into sounds I couldn't decipher. I stayed frozen in that stall, feet planted flat on the floor, praying she wouldn't glance down and see my worn sneakers under the partition. My 5-minute break stretched into 7, then 8. The door opened, closed. Her heels clicked away down the corridor. Only when I was certain she was gone did I unlock the stall and step out on shaking legs. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, ordinary, terrified. The phrases echoed in my head. "Silver-tipped bolts for hunters. Corner table by the eastern window." By the time I returned to the floor, apron retied and order pad in hand, it wasn't hard to match the pieces. 3 men near the kitchen who'd barely touched their appetizers, eyes constantly scanning the room. 1 at the bar, nursing the same whiskey for 40 minutes, his attention fixed on the corner booths. And at the corner table by the eastern window, exactly where she'd said he'd be, Keldron Crowell. I'd served him 3 times before. He never looked at servers. We were furniture to people like him. But everyone at Nightshade knew his name. Old money, older family, the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. His fiancée sat across from him, the woman from the powder room, as she smiled and lied and checked her phone. The folded receipt sat on the marble tabletop between us now. He didn't look at me at first, just lifted his wine glass. The movement elegant and unhurried. Then his gaze dropped to the paper. "Read it," I begged silently. "Read it now, because in 30 seconds I'd have to walk away. In 30 seconds, men with supernatural weapons would make their move. In 30 seconds, I'd either have saved an immortal king's life or condemned myself to a death I couldn't even imagine." His pale fingers, too pale I realized now, too still, touched the edge of the folded receipt, and the world held its breath. His fingers unfolded the receipt with a kind of precision that suggested he'd opened 1,000 threatening letters in his lifetime. I watched his eyes track across my scrawled handwriting. "Your fiancé sold you out. They're in position." And something shifted in his face. Not fear, nothing as human as fear. His expression went utterly blank, smooth as marble. And in that blankness I recognized something ancient and lethal, a predator that had just caught the scent of an ambush. He didn't move, didn't tense, didn't even breathe differently. But the air around him changed, thickened like the moment before a lightning strike. "Charlotte," his fiancée's voice cut through the silence, sharp with false sweetness. "That'll be all." But Keldron's hand moved, a gesture so slight I almost missed it. "Stay." I stayed. The man at the bar moved first. I saw it from the corner of my eye, the way he swiveled on his stool, hand reaching inside his jacket. Keldron saw it too, his head turning with mechanical precision. "Down!" someone shouted. The world exploded into motion. I didn't think. My body moved before my brain caught up, lunging forward, my hand slamming into Keldron's shoulder. He shifted sideways, barely, just inches, and the crossbow bolt screamed past his head in a flash of silver light. It embedded in the wall behind him with a sound like a gunshot, plaster and brick cracking, the silver tip glowing faintly in the candlelight, right where his heart had been. Then Keldron moved, and nothing human moved that fast. One moment he was in his chair, the next he was a blur of black fabric and inhuman grace, his body a shield between me and the chaos erupting across Nightshade's dining room. His arm locked around my shoulders, pulling me down, and the marble tabletop shattered above us as two more bolts slammed into it. Screams, breaking glass, the explosive crack of gunfire. No, not gunfire. I realized more crossbows. The restaurant's other patrons finally understanding this wasn't a robbery. Men in dark suits materialized from nowhere, moving with the same terrible speed as Keldron, intercepting the hunters. The one from the bar went down hard, his crossbow clattering across marble as something, tackled him. The three near the kitchen scattered, but they didn't make it far. It was over in seconds. The dining room had descended into controlled chaos, elegant patrons pressed against walls or fleeing toward exits, while Keldron's security systematically neutralized each threat. I caught a glimpse of the man from the bar being dragged toward the kitchen, silver bolts scattered like fallen stars. Keldron pulled back, his hands still on my shoulders, his pale eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. Up close, I could see what I'd missed before, the otherworldly stillness of his features, the way candlelight didn't quite reflect normally in his eyes, the complete absence of a pulse in his throat. "Your name," he said, not a question, a command wrapped in velvet. "Charlotte." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Charlotte Reed. Charlotte Reed." He repeated it like he was memorizing it, filing it away in whatever immortal memory vampires kept. His gaze flicked to the bolt in the wall, then back to me. "You pushed me." Yes. You saw it coming. I saw him move. I just reacted." Something flickered across his face, too fast to identify. Then his grip on my shoulders tightened, gentle but absolutely unyielding. "You will stay exactly where I can see you," he said quietly. "You don't understand what just happened here. Do you understand?" I understood that it wasn't a request. I understood that I just saved a vampire king's life, and I understood with absolute crystalline clarity that my ordinary human existence had just ended. The man who came for me moved like Keldron, with that same predatory grace that marked him as something other. Tall, dark-haired. "Miss Reed." His voice was polite, inflectionless. "I'm Matthias. I'll be escorting you out. Please stay close." "Out where?" I managed, but he was already guiding me through the kitchen, past shocked line cooks and dishwashers who pressed themselves against stainless steel counters as we passed. Through the service entrance I'd used 100 times before, suddenly foreign in the darkness. The vehicle waiting in the alley was black, sleek, armored. I knew it was armored the moment I saw it, the way the metal sat too heavy, the windows too thick. Matthias opened the rear door with one hand, the other resting casually on something beneath his jacket. That was definitely a weapon. "Mr. Crowell will join us shortly. He's managing the authorities and the restaurant's management." "Managing?" I repeated numbly. sliding into leather seats that probably cost more than my car, ensuring their cooperation and discretion. Matthias closed the door, sealing me in silence, so complete my ears rang. Through the tinted windows, I watched police lights paint the alley blue and red, watched Keldron emerge from Nightshade's back entrance, speaking calmly to a detective who nodded like everything he said was gospel, which it probably was. Power like his didn't ask permission. The drive took 40 minutes through parts of the city I'd never seen, the urban sprawl giving way to gated communities, and then to something beyond even those. Estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates, old money and older secrets. Keldron's fortress rose against the night sky like something from another century, Gothic revival. All dark stone and pointed arches and windows that glowed amber from within. Gargoyles perched on corners, ivy-climbed walls that had stood for longer than I'd been alive. Inside was worse. Ancient luxury that made Nightshade look cheap. Marble floors older than the country. Tapestries that belonged in museums. Furniture that had probably hosted conversations with people who'd been dead for centuries. Chandeliers dripping crystal. Shadows that moved wrong in the candlelight. My studio apartment could fit in the entrance hall. Matthias led me through corridors to a guest suite that was larger than my entire living space. All dark wood and burgundy velvet and a four-poster bed that looked like it had been stolen from a castle. "You'll be safe here," he said. "Try to rest. Mr. Crowell will speak with you in the morning." But rest was impossible. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone clutched in shaking hands, trying to process what had happened, trying to understand how I'd gone from invisible waitress to what? Witness, liability, target. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I should have ignored it, should have thrown the phone across the room. I opened it instead. The first photo showed me in my waitress uniform walking to my car last week. The second showed my apartment building. The third was tonight's attack, zoomed in on my face as I shoved Keldron aside, grainy but unmistakable. Then the text. "We know which human interfered. The Bloodstone Covenant does not forget. You have 3 days to leave the city. If you remain under Crowell's protection, you die with him." My hands went numb. The phone clattered to the floor. A knock at the door made me jump. Keldron entered without waiting for permission, Matthias behind him. His pale eyes went to my face, then to the phone on the floor. "Show me," he said quietly. I did. His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees when he spoke. His voice was soft, ancient, absolutely lethal. "Matthias, triple the perimeter guard. No one enters or leaves the grounds without my explicit authorization." His gaze fixed on me. "You will not be leaving my protection, Miss Reed. Not now. Not until every member of the Bloodstone Covenant understands what happens when they threaten what's mine." What's mine? I should have been terrified. Maybe I was. But underneath the fear was something else. Something warm and dangerous that felt disturbingly like relief. Sleep never came. At dawn, I found Keldron in what Matthias called the solarium, though no sun touched the room. Blackout curtains sealed every window. He sat in a leather chair that looked older than my family tree, reading something on a tablet that seemed absurd in his ancient hands. "I want answers," I said before courage could fail me. "Real ones. No more cryptic protection speeches. If I'm risking my life, I deserve to know why." He looked up, and for the first time I saw something almost like respect in those pale eyes. "Yes, you do." He set the tablet aside. "What did you think I was, Charlotte, when you wrote that note?" "Dangerous." The word came automatically. "Powerful. Someone Fiona wanted dead badly enough to hire assassins with silver weapons." I gestured vaguely. "Silver," he repeated softly. "You understood what that meant. I've seen enough movies to guess. Movies." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. How disappointingly accurate they've become. He stood, and even that simple movement carried an otherworldly grace. I am 317 years old. I died in 1724 and woke to a different kind of life. For the past 3 centuries, I have ruled this city's vampire hierarchy, not through appointment, but through strength, strategy, and an unwillingness to let ambitious children tear apart what I built. The words should have sounded insane. Instead, they settled over me like inevitable truth. Fiona was to be my political alliance, he continued, voice flat. The Whitmore line joined with House Crowell. Power consolidated. Stability maintained. His jaw tightened. I did not anticipate her ambition would outweigh her survival instinct. The Bloodstone Covenant, I said. The messages mentioned them. Vampires who believe the old ways are dead, that we should seize power openly, stop hiding among humans. Keldron's expression hardened. They want war. I want survival. Fiona chose their vision over mine. Matthias entered carrying a silver tray with coffee. Real coffee. The scent alone worth whatever bargain I'd accidentally made. He set it before me with that same careful grace. Miss Reed should understand the broader picture. Then explain it, Keldron said. Matthias settled into a chair across from me. The supernatural world operates on rules older than most nations. Hierarchies, territories, blood debts. The Covenant wants to dismantle those structures, but without them there would be chaos, exposure, war with humans who vastly outnumber us. His dark eyes fixed on me. Your humanity makes you vulnerable. You can die easily. You have no supernatural defenses, but it also makes you invaluable. How? You saved his life, Matthias said simply. A human acted without supernatural compulsion, without blood bonds or magical contracts. You chose to intervene when you could have walked away. By the oldest laws we follow, Mr. Crowell owes you a blood debt. Keldron's voice cut through the explanation. More than debt, you saw danger and acted despite having every reason to ignore it, despite knowing it would destroy your safe, invisible existence. He leaned forward. That kind of courage is rare even among immortals, Charlotte. Among humans, it's nearly extinct. So what does that mean? My coffee sat untouched, going cold. This blood debt. It means your life is bound to mine until the debt is satisfied, Keldron said. It means I am honor-bound to protect you as I would protect myself. It means the Covenant cannot touch you without declaring war on my entire house. His pale eyes held mine, and it means that for the first time in 3 centuries, I find myself genuinely interested in keeping someone alive for reasons beyond strategy. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. How long? I asked quietly. How long until the debt is paid? That, Keldron said, is entirely up to you. I found him at midnight in his study, surrounded by walls of leather-bound books that probably predated electricity. He stood at the window, a shadow against shadows, staring out at grounds I couldn't see through the darkness. You should be resting, he said without turning. I should be asking how you didn't see it. The words came sharper than I intended. Fiona, how does someone plan your assassination for weeks, maybe months, and you miss it completely? His shoulders tensed. Careful, Charlotte. Or what? I'm already a target. I'm already trapped here under your blood debt protection. I moved closer, anger overriding self-preservation. You ruled for 3 centuries. You built this entire hierarchy, but you couldn't see that your own fiancée wanted you dead. He turned then, and the expression on his face stopped my breath. Not anger, something rarer, something that looked almost like pain. I saw what I wanted to see, he said quietly. I saw a political alliance that would secure peace. I saw a partner who understood the necessity of the old ways. I saw... He stopped. Jaw tight, I saw what 300 years of isolation taught me to see: strategy, never trust. Then why marry her at all? Because I am tired. The admission seemed torn from somewhere deep. Tired of centuries alone, tired of every relationship being transaction, every conversation being calculation. He moved to the desk, bracing his hands against dark wood. In 1724, I was human. I was 26. I trusted the wrong person, my business partner, someone I considered a brother. He saw an opportunity to seize what I'd built. He hired someone to kill me in an alley behind my own warehouse. I stayed silent, watching his profile in the lamplight. I didn't die cleanly. The vampire who found me, she gave me a choice. True death or something else. I chose survival. I always choose survival. His voice went distant. But survival for 3 centuries means learning that trust is fatal, that everyone wants something, that the moment you let someone close, they find a knife in your back, so you shut everyone out. I ruled, he corrected, alone, absolute, safe, lonely. His pale eyes cut to me. Loneliness is a small price for survival. Is it? I moved closer, close enough to see the ancient weariness in his face, because it looks like loneliness almost got you killed. You were so isolated, you couldn't see betrayal when it was sitting across from you every night. Before he could respond, Matthias appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. His expression was grim. We've located them. Fiona and Lucian Ashford, the Obsidian Tower, top floor. Lucian's using it as temporary headquarters for the Covenant leadership. Keldron straightened, and in an instant the vulnerable man disappeared behind 3 centuries of predator. How many? 15, maybe 20, but the building is civilian-occupied. Lower floors are residential and commercial. Then we do this carefully. Keldron's voice went cold. Tactical. Assemble the strike team. I want minimal collateral exposure. We go in 2 hours before dawn. Wait, I said. You're going to confront them now? Keldron looked at me, and something in his gaze made my pulse stutter. They threatened you. They sent you photos, Charlotte. They made you a target to punish me. His voice dropped to something almost too quiet to hear. 3 centuries taught me many things. One of them is this. You protect what matters ruthlessly, absolutely, without hesitation. You matter more than you should, he said, far more than is strategic. Then he was moving, calling orders, preparing for war, and I stood in his study, heart racing, understanding that somewhere between the folded receipt and this moment, I'd stopped being a chess piece in an immortal king's game. I'd become something far more dangerous, something he might actually care about. The Obsidian Tower rose, 40 stories above the financial district, all black glass and steel, a monument to modern wealth that housed ancient predators. Keldron's convoy arrived at 3 in the morning, 6 vehicles, 20 vampires moving with military precision. I shouldn't have been there. Matthias had argued against it. But Keldron had looked at me and said simply, "She stays where I can see her." And that had been the end of it. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt eternal. Keldron stood perfectly still, but the air around him vibrated with barely contained violence. He changed into black tactical gear that somehow still looked elegant on him, and the cold fury in his pale eyes could have frozen blood. The doors opened onto luxury that rivaled Keldron's estate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble and chrome. And at the center, surrounded by a dozen vampires in expensive suits, stood Fiona and a man I'd never seen before. Lucian Ashford, I realized, tall, dark-haired, handsome in a way that felt manufactured, old money and older cruelty. Keldron. Fiona's voice carried that same practiced brightness from Nightshade. She wore white, pristine and innocent, diamonds glittering at her throat. I wondered when you'd come. Did you? Keldron's voice was ice, absolute zero. When you hired assassins with silver bolts, when you orchestrated my execution in a public restaurant, You wondered when I'd respond. It wasn't personal. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who genuinely believed her own lies. Your era is over, Keldron. 3 centuries of hiding, of bowing to human laws, of pretending we're not apex predators. She gestured to Lucian. The Covenant offers a better future. Power without apology, strength without compromise. War, Keldron said flatly. You offer war with 7 billion humans who will exterminate us the moment they understand what we are. Lucian stepped forward, all swagger and arrogance. We offer evolution. Your generation built empires in shadow. We'll build them in daylight. His gaze flicked to me, dismissive. You even brought your human pet. How sentimental. Something in me snapped. Sentimental. I moved forward before I could stop myself, before Matthias could grab my arm. She tried to murder him, her own fiancé. Not honorable combat, not an open challenge. She hired assassins to shoot him in the back while he was having dinner. I looked at Fiona, and the disgust in my voice was real. You talk about power and strength, but you're just ambitious cowards too afraid to face him directly. Fiona's smile went sharp. The human has opinions. How quaint. The human, Lucian said, moving with that same supernatural speed, suddenly close enough to touch, is a liability. His hand shot out, fingers closing around my throat, not squeezing, but the threat implicit. We know about the blood debt, Crowl. Ancient law. You're bound to protect her, which means she's the perfect leverage, too. He didn't finish. Keldron moved, and it wasn't the controlled grace I'd seen before. This was 3 centuries of predatory violence unleashed in a single instant. One moment Lucian held my throat. The next he was across the room, embedded in the wall, Keldron's hand around his neck. The ancient vampire's face transformed into something truly monstrous. Touch her again, Keldron said, voice gone utterly inhuman. And I will eradicate every member of the Bloodstone Covenant. I will hunt each of you across continents. I will make your deaths last decades. He lifted Lucian higher, fingers tightening. I have spent 3 centuries building power, establishing alliances, creating networks you cannot imagine. You think yourselves ambitious, your children playing with fire. The temperature dropped. Frost formed on the windows. Every vampire in the room went absolutely still, recognizing something primal and terrifying in Keldron's fury. She is under my protection. Each word felt like a sentence. She's bound me by blood debt and by choice. And if you or any Covenant member approaches her, threatens her, or so much as speaks her name, his eyes, no longer pale but burning with ancient power, swept the room. I will remind you all why I have ruled this city for 3 centuries unchallenged. He released Lucian, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. Keldron turned to Fiona, and his voice went soft again, which was somehow worse. You wanted a new reign, my dear. Congratulations, you've started a war you cannot possibly win. Then he took my hand, his fingers cold, steady, and led me toward the elevator. Behind us, no one moved, no one spoke. The message had been delivered. The summons arrived 3 days later on official government letterhead, delivered by courier to Keldron's estate. Agent Marcus Vale, Supernatural Enforcement Agency, requesting Charlotte Reed's presence for questioning regarding supernatural violence perpetrated at Nightshade Restaurant and subsequent events at Obsidian Tower. I stared at the paper, my coffee going cold in my hands. I didn't know the government had a supernatural enforcement agency. Most humans don't. Keldron stood at the window of his study, silhouetted against morning light filtered through heavy curtains. It's a small division, highly classified. They monitor supernatural activity, enforce the treaties between our world and yours. investigate breaches of the masquerade. His voice went flat. Agent Vale has been trying to build a case against me for 5 years, and now he has a human witness. Yes. The lawyer Keldron hired was a woman named Isidora Chin, supernatural herself. Something fey, I thought, from the 2 sharp angles of her face and the way her eyes caught light wrong. She prepped me for 6 hours in Keldron's library, running through questions, probable tactics, legal rights I didn't know I had. Vale will try to make you afraid of Mr. Crowell, she said, tapping a manicured nail against her tablet. He'll paint him as dangerous, unstable, a threat to human safety. He'll offer you agency protection, relocation, and a new identity. Keldron is dangerous, I said. Yes, but he's also bound to protect you by blood debt and ancient law. The AY's protection is... Isidora's expression went grim. Let's just say their track record with protecting human witnesses against determined supernatural threats is not impressive. That evening, Keldron found me on the terrace, staring at city lights in the distance. My old life was somewhere out there, my apartment, my things, an existence that felt like it belonged to someone else now. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. The interrogation. You owe me nothing, Charlotte. The blood debt binds me to protect you, not the reverse. If you want to take the AY's offer, disappear into their witness protection. He stopped, jaw tight. I won't stop you. You're giving me permission to leave. I'm giving you a choice, a real choice, not coerced by supernatural law or fear. His pale eyes met mine. Choose your own path. I'll honor it either way. The interrogation room at the AY's downtown office was deliberately intimidating. Concrete walls, steel table, the smell of industrial disinfectant. Agent Vale was exactly what I expected. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of man who'd build a career on reading people. Miss Reed. He settled into the chair across from me with practiced ease. Thank you for coming voluntarily. I understand you've been staying at Keldron Crowell's estate under his protection. Yes, protection. He said it like the word tasted bad. From the Bloodstone Covenant, who targeted you after you interfered with their assassination attempt. Tell me, do you feel safe with Mr. Crowell? More safe than I would anywhere else. Vale leaned forward, voice dropping to something almost paternal. Charlotte, may I call you Charlotte? You're a civilian caught in supernatural politics you don't understand. Keldron Crowell is one of the most dangerous vampires in North America. 3 centuries old, more kills attributed to him than most serial murderers. He's managed to stay ahead of us through political maneuvering and carefully maintained power structures, but that doesn't make him safe. He saved my life at Obsidian Tower. After putting you in danger by taking you to a confrontation with hostile supernaturals. Vale pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. Photos. The Obsidian Tower lobby. Keldron's hand around Lucian's throat. The frost on the windows. This is what happens when ancient vampires lose control. Collateral damage. Human casualties. We found 3 humans working late in that building. They saw things that required memory alteration. My stomach twisted, but I kept my voice steady. Lucian Ashford grabbed my throat and threatened me. Keldron responded excessively, disproportionately. Vale's eyes bored into mine. The agency can protect you, Charlotte. Real protection, not supernatural coercion disguised as honor. New identity, new city, financial support. While you rebuild your life, you could be free of all of this. Free, I repeated. Free to live in hiding under a fake name, hoping the Bloodstone Covenant never finds me? Because they sent me photos of my apartment. Agent Vale, they knew my schedule, my routine. They're supernatural creatures with resources and centuries-long grudges. How exactly does the agency protect me against that? Vale's expression hardened. We have protocols. Protocols, I leaned forward. I'm sure they're very thorough, but here's the reality. Keldron Crowell is bound by ancient law to protect me. Breaking that bond would destroy his honor and his standing among his kind. The Covenant knows this. They know attacking me means war with him and every alliance he's built. That's better protection than any government protocol. You're rationalizing captivity. I'm choosing survival. I stood. Are we done here? Vale watched me for a long moment, something almost like respect flickering across his face. You understand what you're choosing, a life in the supernatural world. There's no going back from this. I understood that the moment I wrote the note. I said, "Are we done?" He nodded slowly. "For now. But Miss Reed, if you ever change your mind, if you ever need real help, the AY's door is open." I walked out into the late afternoon sun, where Matthias waited by the car. Keldron stood nearby, perfectly still, watching me approach. "Well?" he asked quietly. "Take me home," I said. His estate, I realized, somewhere between the agency office and the car, not my apartment. Home. It took Keldron 2 weeks to dismantle the Bloodstone Covenant, and he did it with surgical precision that made the Obsidian Tower confrontation look like mercy. Lucian Ashford was cornered in a safe house in Prague by Keldron's European allies. No violence, no dramatic showdown, just irrefutable evidence delivered to the Council of Elders, the ancient governing body of vampire law. Financial records showing Covenant funds used for unauthorized territory expansion. Communications proving planned attacks on 3 other established vampire houses. Security footage of the Nightshade assassination attempt with silver weapons, forbidden under the Treaty of 1823. I watched via video conference as the council delivered their judgment. 12 ancient vampires, older even than Keldron, their faces showing the weight of centuries. Lucian stood before them, all his swagger gone, looking exactly like what he was, an ambitious child who'd overplayed his hand against masters of the game. "Lucian Ashford," the head elder intoned, "you are found in violation of supernatural law. The Bloodstone Covenant is hereby disbanded. You are exiled from North American territories indefinitely. Should you return, the sentence is true death." Lucian's face went ashen, but he nodded. Exile or execution. He'd chosen survival, just like Keldron always did. Fiona's confrontation was more personal. She came to the estate voluntarily, elegant in designer black, her blonde hair perfect, her composure intact until Keldron activated the recording. Her voice filled the study, captured from her phone the night of the attack. "The hunters are already inside. Silver-tipped bolts the moment he's settled. Dawn will break on a new reign." Then Lucian's response, equally damning, and Fiona Whitmore becomes the new queen. She went very still, watching 3 centuries of careful planning disintegrate in 30 seconds of audio. "You have 2 options," Keldron said, his voice empty of emotion. "Face the council and accept their judgment, which will likely be execution for conspiracy to murder a sitting House Lord, or—" He slid papers across the desk. "Accept exile, magical binding to prevent further betrayal, and a modest settlement that will keep you comfortable in whatever European city you choose." "Generous," Fiona said bitterly. "Strategic. Your execution would start a blood feud with the Whitmore line. Your exile resolves the threat cleanly." His pale eyes held no warmth. "Choose." She signed. The magical binding happened that night, performed by a witch Matthias brought from the city. Ancient words in a language I didn't recognize, silver chains that glowed and then faded into Fiona's skin like scars. "Insurance against betrayal," Isidora explained. If Fiona acted against Keldron or his interests, the binding would activate, causing agony that would increase until she stopped. By the time Fiona left for the airport, pale and diminished, the threats were neutralized. The Covenant disbanded, Lucian exiled, The council satisfied. Agent Vale had closed his investigation, finding insufficient evidence of supernatural law violations. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. That evening, Kell found me in the library, where I'd spent so many hours learning about his world. He carried an envelope, setting it on the table beside me with careful precision. "It's done," he said. "You're safe now. No more threats. No more danger from the Covenant or Fiona's conspirators." He gestured to the envelope. "New identity, complete documentation, financial accounts sufficient for a comfortable life anywhere you choose. The blood debt is satisfied. You saved my life. I've eliminated the threats to yours. You're free to go." I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. Free! I made you a promise. Real choice. No coercion. His expression was carefully neutral, but something flickered in his pale eyes. "You can return to your human life, Charlotte. Start over somewhere new, somewhere safe, or—" His jaw tightened. "Or you can stay. Not because of blood debt or supernatural law. Not because you're afraid or trapped, but because you choose to." I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. Everything I'd wanted 2 weeks ago, safety, anonymity, my old life back, was inside. And I realized I didn't want it anymore. "I need to think," I said. He nodded, something that might have been disappointment crossing his face. "Take all the time you need." Then he left me alone with the envelope and the choice that would define the rest of my life. 2 weeks passed. Agent Vale made a final visit, closing his file with a warning that the AY's door remained open if I ever needed it. The Council of Elders sent formal confirmation that all threats against me had been resolved and recognized. The envelope sat on my dresser, unopened, a constant reminder of the escape route I hadn't taken. I found myself walking the estate gardens at dusk, when the world balanced between day and night, human and supernatural. Roses grew here despite the season, tended by staff who moved with that telltale, otherworldly grace. The garden was ancient, like everything Keldron touched, paths worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. I'd been invisible my entire life, the waitress no one noticed, the human beneath the attention of powerful beings. I'd convinced myself that invisibility was safety, that staying small kept me alive. But I'd been wrong. Safety wasn't invisibility. Safety was being seen by someone powerful enough to protect you, and choosing to see them in return. Not their power, not their crown, not the 3 centuries of carefully constructed control, but the lonely being beneath all of it. Keldron found me by the fountain, as I'd known he would. He always knew where I was on the grounds, some supernatural awareness that should have felt invasive, but instead felt protective. "I'm staying," I said, before he could speak. "But I have terms." Something flickered across his face. Hope, maybe, or fear. "Name them." "I keep some human connections. My mother, my best friend from college. I won't be cut off completely from the life I had." I turned to face him fully. "This is partnership, Keldron, not possession. I'm not your human pet or your property. I'm your equal, even if I'm mortal." "Agreed." "I retain the right to leave if I choose. No magical binding, no blood bonds that remove my agency. If I stay, it's because I want to every single day." "Agreed." His voice had gone quiet, careful. "And honesty. Complete honesty. No more secrets about your world, your past, your enemies. If I'm going to live in this world, I need to understand it fully." He stepped closer, pale eyes searching my face. "Is that all?" "One more thing." I held his gaze. "You let someone in, not just me. You stop ruling alone. You stop treating every relationship as transaction. You remember what it felt like to be human, to trust, to be more than just the vampire king." For a long moment he said nothing. "In 317 years, Charlotte," he finally said, "countless beings have allied with me, served me, claimed to love me. Every single one of them chose my power, my protection, my resources, the crown, and what it could give them." His hand rose, fingers gentle against my cheek. "You're the first person in 3 centuries who chose the being beneath the crown, the lonely fool who couldn't see betrayal coming, the man who died in an alley in 1724 and spent forever trying to survive." "I chose you," I said simply, "not the king, you." "Why?" Because you gave me real choice, because you protected me even when it complicated your strategy, because underneath all that ancient power and control, you're just as scared of being hurt as I am." I smiled slightly. "And because someone has to stop you from eating alone in your study every night for the next 3 centuries. Something that might have been a laugh escaped him, rough and amused. Then his hand slid to the back of my neck, drawing me closer, and his lips met mine with a gentleness that belied 3 centuries of predatory power. The kiss tasted like wine and eternity, like danger and chosen trust. When we broke apart, the world had shifted, not the supernatural world or the human one, but the space between them where we'd built something new. "Partners," he said, testing the word. "Partners," I confirmed. "Equal, honest, dangerous, impossible partners across every divide that should separate us. I can work with that." His arms came around me, secure and careful, protective, but not possessive. "Welcome home, Charlotte Reed." And standing in those ancient gardens at dusk, held by a vampire king who'd finally let someone see past his crown, I realized I'd found something I'd never known I wanted, a life that mattered, a partnership that challenged me, and a love that existed outside every rule about what humans and immortals could be to each other. Dangerous? Absolutely. Impossible? Probably. But mine, chosen, real, and that made all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video. Drop your favorite part in the comments and subscribe. Tomorrow's story is already waiting in the shadows. Thanks for watching.